Welcome back to Frankly Speaking Sports. It is my great honor, pleasure, and thrill to have with us today on the Frankly Speaking Sports Hotline. He covers Ohio State at Buckeye Scoop. Let's please welcome Alex Gleitman. Alex, how you doing today?
I'm good. How are you? Thanks for having me on.
Oh, thanks for coming on. I know you're real busy today. Hey, I just heard yesterday, and what timing to have you on right after this announcement comes down that the Ohio State president, I believe it's Michael Drake, announced that Ohio State, they're moving forward as far as they are planning with the 2020 football season, and that's with fans in the stands. Are you surprised that he came out with that comment yesterday?
No, I'm not surprised. I think they were waiting for kind of the final piece of the puzzle, which is are students going to be on campus before they decided to move forward with the plan to play football. And, they announced yesterday that the semester would be starting in late August with students on campus. It would be an abbreviated semester on campus to some extent, so students will just go home after Thanksgiving and finish their classes and take their finals from home. But I think once that was kind of figured out and announced, it's no surprise to hear that Ohio State football will be back this year in some capacity. We don't know if it's going to be the schedule played as planned, but it does seem that anywhere between 20 to 50,000 fans will be in the Horseshoe every Saturday when there's a home game. So I guess, if you're a fan of the Buckeyes or college football in general, that's certainly great news to hear.
Yeah, and you just mentioned what I was about to say was that stadium sits at full capacity, roughly 100,000 people. So even with some of these, rules in place where they're only allowed to fill to a certain percentage, they still could have, like you said, 25 to 50,000 fans still rocking that stadium.
Yeah, they haven't announced what the plans are exactly yet. They said that they're expecting fans to be in there, social distancing and all necessary precautions taken. And so there will be some spacing out and things of that nature. I'm sure fans will be required to wear masks. But the numbers we've heard is, it seems like on the low end, 20,000, on the high end, 50,000. And I know, obviously, certainly when there's that much money involved, they're going to be pushing toward 50,000 if they can make that happen.
Yeah, and, it's amazing how much, and you and I both know it. I used to live in Gainesville, Florida for a couple of years where the Florida Gators are big time college football in the SEC, and you're in the Big Ten with big time Ohio State. Without those fans in the stands, we're talking about billions of dollars in revenue that these colleges would lose. And I know, in my opinion, and I want to get yours, I can't see, any of these big schools going without fans.
Yeah, I think every situation is different. When you talk about a Rutgers, which is kind of in the heat of things in the New York, New Jersey, the NYC metro area, obviously the situation's a lot different than it is for the Idaho Vandals, for example, right? So I think every situation is going to have to be looked at differently. But I do think for the majority of teams that are playing, if not all the teams that are actually playing, that there will be fans in the stands. And you have to remember, it's not just this money funding those specific teams or the athletic departments in general. It's funding the whole university. Athletic money goes toward paying for libraries and paying for equipment and paying, for staff and things like that. And especially at a place like Ohio State where they've already, think about this. The revenue losses they're predicting is $300 million because of the pandemic, and that's a lot of money right there. And so if you take out, as you said, millions and millions more, it only cuts into that, and again, not only affects athletics, but affects the entire university as a whole, and some of the things that they're trying to do for the non-athletic student body.
Now, as a fan and as a person that reports, and covers both, I think you cover Rutgers as well, correct?
That's correct, yeah.
Right. So for someone that covers two big schools, let's take it from a fan's perspective. Would you feel comfortable going to a game at that 25% or 50% capacity?
For me personally, I don't know if I would. I have a young son. He's, not even a year and a half yet. He will be by the time the season starts. I have another son on the way. My wife's pregnant, so and then I have family members that are high risk, and grandparents and things like that. And if I want to see them, I don't know if I potentially put myself in that situation, but that's my opinion. I think with this whole thing, everyone has to make their own opinions on what they're comfortable with and what their situations are. And I think, the biggest thing is just respecting that, whether you agree with it or not, or whether you do it or not. I think as long as everyone respects, just this whole process and what everyone wants to do, then that's fine. There's for Ohio State, I know there's definitely going to be 50,000 people that are going to be willing and comfortable going to a game every Saturday, but there's going to be a lot of people that aren't as well. And so those people can stay home and watch on their couches. And, that's probably what I'm going to be doing. But, we'll see. I think there's a lot that can change between now and September. And so my feelings might change by then. But right now, for my particular situation, I don't know if I would feel comfortable doing that. And we don't even know the guidelines yet. So I think there's a lot of factors involved. But I think everyone has a personal decision to make on their own situation.
We are talking to Alex Gleitman. He covers Ohio State and Rutgers University. He's on the Frankly Speaking Sports hotline. This Monday, I believe it's this Monday, college campuses are opening up their facilities now for, the athletes to come on campus, to work out, to use the facilities. So it looks like, things are starting to get back to normal, aren't they, as far as the 2020 season goes?
Yeah, again, every state is different. Every school is different, private, public, by state. So, something like Rutgers, they're not going to be open next week. I think they're eyeing the week of June 22nd, but I know Ohio State is going to be open and starting voluntary workouts next week. There's a few other programs across the country that are going to be in the same boat. But I will say from athletes I've spoken to, just understanding the process, it seems like there will be some sort of testing early next week for a lot of these schools before athletes can participate in those workouts. So it's good to see that schools are taking precautions. Obviously, if someone tests positive for the COVID-19 virus, it's going to be interesting to see how they handle those things. But it does seem like it's not like they're just bringing everyone back without any precautions. There's definitely going to be measures taken. But, it's exciting that we're going to get back in the swing of football, and things are starting to open up, not just athletics, but, in general across the country.
And you should be in Ohio State. What a year you had last year. But before we get into that year, a couple of years ago, I think it was 2018, you're going through a scandalous season where Urban Meyer is being under media attack for, allowing a previous coach or a current coach to go ahead and engage in domestic violence. And basically people saying, he didn't handle it correctly and so on. Come 2018, when Urban Meyer finally retires, or whatever you want to call it, did you ever expect the following season to be as successful as it was?
I think anyone who says yes is just flat out lying, or lying to themselves. I have a tremendous respect for Ryan Day. He was on the staff before, and, I got to know him a little bit over the 2 years he was on staff, and, there was no doubt he was going to be a successful head coach. But when you talk about Urban Meyer, who's arguably the greatest college coach of all time, him, Nick Saban, obviously Bear Bryant, Woody Hayes, there's a bunch of guys you could put in that group, but he's no doubt one of the best college coaches of all time. He won national championships at Florida and Ohio State, numerous conference championships, a tremendous recruiter. And so to expect, even to say that there would be little to no drop-off, I think everyone's lying to themselves. I think everyone was nervous about it. But what Ryan Day was able to do, bringing in Justin Fields, kind of rehauling the whole defensive staff and making sure that the defense was set right, just not even missing a beat on the recruiting trail. It's been absolutely incredible to see. And, for me, I'm someone who's usually, I don't want to say pessimistic about Ohio State's chances, but I would say realistic. I don't ever really predict them to win a national championship or go undefeated. But to me, the year they had last year was incredible, and it sets up to this year, for me, expectations that it's national championship or bust in 2020.
So let me ask you this: Ryan Day comes in last year, I believe. If I'm going off the top of my head now, correct me if I'm wrong, but I think overall the team ended up 13-1, and I think they were undefeated in the Big Ten. I think they were like 9-0. I think they played 9 games. Um, some people are gonna always say, and you know this, you've been around long enough, Alex, that he was working with Urban Meyer's team. But from what you're just telling me, and I agree with you actually, is that he did a lot of stuff on his own to really make that team successful. It wasn't all just being handed to him from Urban Meyer, was it?
No, absolutely. And like to pretend the cupboard is bare, that would be ignorant as well. I mean, obviously Urban Meyer and his staff and Ryan Day being a part of that, they brought in a ton of talent. And but I don't think that's any different than if you look at Ohio State over time. They've always had talent. But what happened with Earl Bruce? I mean, he was a very good coach, but he wasn't completely dominant. What happened with John Cooper? Another very good coach. He couldn't get over the Michigan hump and win conference titles. But then you bring in Jim Tressel, and a lot of the same players. He was able to win a championship in year 2. The year before Urban Meyer got there, a lot of the same players. That team went 6-7. He goes 12-0 in his first year. And so I think what Ryan Day was able to do is kind of put his stamp on this team. He could have handled things, very similar to Urban as far as the culture and the way he acts and all, the staff members. But he took it upon himself to put his own stamp on the program, whether that's his personality and having that reflected on the team, whether that was making decisions to completely rehaul the defensive staff other than Larry Johnson and bring in his own guys and his own vision of how the defense should be operated, whether that was going out and getting Justin Fields because he felt that the talent in the quarterback room wasn't fit to run his system. He made all of those decisions, and that is what led, I think, to Ohio State having as much success, not only as they had last year, but putting them in a position to have success moving forward as he continues to kind of put his stamp on this program and not just ride Urban's coattails.
Now in 2020, and we're only projecting, of course, I mean, Ohio State, once again, is going to be a powerhouse. Do you see this team being a team that has what it takes to actually get over the hump this year and make it to the national championship?
I do. As I mentioned before, I think it's national championship or bust this year. You have a lot of your pieces, especially on the offensive side of the ball, back, led by Justin Fields. Football is a game where if you don't have a quarterback who could get the job done, especially in college football, you're not going to be able to do it. And I think Ohio State, obviously Trevor Lawrence, tremendous talent, but and I would have him above Fields right now. But if Ohio State is one of the top 2 quarterbacks in college football, and Justin Fields, and as long as he stays healthy, I think they're going to have a great chance. Sure, there are some things where they have to retool and reload, but again, I think they have the talent, I think they have the coaching, and I think the defense is going to be good again, really good again. I think on the offensive side of the ball, they did lose some talent, but the guys they have replacing a few of the guys that left or went to the NFL, it's top notch. So there are really no concerns on my part, and I think the way the Clemson game played out last year, it's definitely given this team a little bit of fuel throughout the offseason and motivation to make sure that they kind of do get over that little hump and make it back to the national championship game, somewhere they haven't been since the 2014 season.
Now, obviously, Clemson's going to look good again this year with Trevor Lawrence. Who do you see, maybe that's a better way of wording it, that puts a major threat on the possibility of Ohio State getting to that game this year?
Yeah, I mean, look, it's multifaceted there. I think Clemson, for me, if I was going to pick right now, would be Ohio State and Clemson competing for the national.
Whoops. Let's see what happened. Are you there?
I'm here.
Okay, I'm not sure what that was.
Yeah, but anyway, as I was saying, Ohio State and Clemson are my 2 picks for the 2 top teams. I think the SEC is a little interesting this year. LSU, I think it's definitely going to take a big drop off after all the talent they lost. I think Florida could be pretty good. I think Georgia could be pretty good. I think Alabama will be back and win the SEC West again. But I'm not sure any of those teams are as good as Ohio State or Clemson. And not to mention, obviously, the schedule will certainly help a little bit. But when you look at Ohio State's schedule, they are supposed to make a trip to Oregon, who does have a lot coming back, especially on defense. They're going to have a really good defense. They lose Justin Herbert, but they got a transfer from Boston College that I think can do a good job running their offense. So that's one game. And then, of course, I think at Penn State, which is supposed to be a night game, a whiteout game, which is generally a very, very tough environment to play in. Who knows what that's going to look like with fans and, the whole pandemic and things like that. But those are two kind of roadblocks during the season that, I think Ohio State could potentially lose the Oregon game and still, be fine. But the Penn State game could be a problem. I think the Nittany Lions are going to be pretty good. And the winner of that game could be, the team that ends up making the college football playoff out of the Big Ten this year. So I would say, that Penn State game and then, potentially Clemson, those would be my two biggest teams that are a threat to Ohio State, in my opinion, of making the national championship game.
We're talking to Alex Gleitman. He covers Ohio State and also Rutgers University. Before I let you go, Alex, because I know you have an appointment there today, I have to ask you this final question because I like to get everybody's opinion on this. College football currently has a 4-team playoff. You hear mixed reviews about it, whether there should be more teams involved, maybe to an 8-team format. What is your belief on the current playoff system? And if you do not like it, what do you think should be done to alter it?
Yeah, I'm fine with the current system. I am in favor of expansion, but I would never go more than 8 teams. I think when you look at probably the top 8 teams every year, even like the 7th and 8th team are kind of a stretch. Anything beyond that is a huge stretch to me. So I would either go with 6 or 8. If you go with 6, it still makes the regular season really important in playing for those top 2 spots to kind of get a bye. I think if you go to 8, that's fine too, but the way I would reward the regular season performance and the seeding is by giving the top 4 teams home field advantage in the first round. I think it would be really cool to see a game in December where Ohio State is hosting Georgia in Ohio Stadium, making a Southern team come up north, and it certainly would give performing better in the regular season an advantage over playing at a neutral field where the fans are split and things like that. And so if they go to 8, I think you have to do home field advantage for the first 4 teams. I also would say all the Power 5 conference winners should be in the playoff, which makes, again, the regular season and the conference championships important. So you would have those 5 teams, and then I would have 3 wild cards that a committee would be able to select, and they would seed the whole 8 teams. So then, you could have a team like UCF in the past getting in as a wild card team. You could have 2 teams from a conference with one of them getting in as a wild card team. And I think that is probably the most likely scenario, going to 8. But I also wouldn't, I would be in favor of potentially going to 6 with the first 2 teams having a bye. But I think 8 is definitely more likely, and I kind of like the home field advantage with the 5 Power Conference champions and then 3 wild cards.
Alex, I want to thank you so very much for joining us on Frankly Speaking Sports today. Hopefully during the season when games start being played in front of crowds and stuff, love to have you back on where we can break down maybe some Ohio State football and Rutgers football as well.
Yeah, definitely. Appreciate you having me on. Happy to come back anytime, and hope everyone continues to stay safe and healthy out there.
Yeah, you stay safe as well, my friend.
All right, thanks.
Thank you. That was Alex Gleitman. He's an insider for Ohio State at Buckeye Scoop, and he covers Rutgers University. We'll be back right after this.